Today, I'm going to share with you the best world building technique I've ever learned. During quarantine, my mom gave me this book. She's in education, so she was reading it for other reasons, but she came across a chapter in that book about world building and thought that I would be interested in reading it. It's called Design Unbound by Anne Pendleton Julian and John Seeley Brown. A lot of the advice I'm going to give you today comes from this book, and I'm also going to sprinkle in tips and tricks that I learned from my classes, and also some pitfalls that I've fallen into in the past and how to overcome them. So this basically goes without saying, but it's important for your world to make sense. It is so important for your world to be coherent, especially for genres like climate fiction or science fiction, when you're trying to make a statement about the way that the world works. All world building starts by asking yourself the question, what if? You ask yourself, what if XYZ were true? And create a world in which it is. All epic stories ask really high-level what-if questions. For example, Cassandra Clare, in her Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, and larger cinematic universe, asks, what if there was a race of half-angel, half-human humans that fought demons? I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that right. I'm pretty sure they were half-angel, half-human. So in order for your world to be coherent, you need it to be believable, and you need all of the moving pieces that make your world function fit together neatly. You don't want things like gaping plot holes and frustrating conveniences and things that don't quite make sense and things you can't explain. You don't want all of these frustrating coincidences and have readers reading your book and be like, would that really happen in real life? Really? If readers don't trust in your world, it's going to be hard for them to get sucked into your story because they're going to stop trusting you as an author. Design Unbound breaks down all the different types of worlds that you can build into 7 different types of worlds. Each type of world requires you to build the world in a slightly different way, so understanding what type of world the world that you want to build is a very crucial first step to the world building process. The first type of world that you can build is a world designed around a concept. This is a world where a philosophical construct answers every question that a reader or person within the world can have about the world. The book gives an example of a world like this. I could not off the top of my head think of a world like this, but apparently there's a world like this in Tlan Ukbar Orbis Tertius by Jorge Luis Borges. The second type of world that this book talks about is a world based on a system of logic or illogic and practices around deploying that system throughout the world. And an example that they give is in Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is a pretty zany story. When you read it for the first time, it's really kind of hard to believe that there's any order to all the madness happening to Alice, but there is. Just like our world follows the rule of gravity, Alice in Wonderland adheres to rules of cause and effect and symbolic logic. Even though a lot of the characters in Alice in Wonderland are zany, they all have small little rules that govern what they can and cannot do within the universe. Whenever Alice acts repeatedly in a particular way, Wonderland reacts to Alice consistently. Its logic and rules is what helps Wonderland remain consistent. If another character were to go through Wonderland, they would obviously have a different experience, but Wonderland would operate in a similar way because it's bound by these rules of mathematics and wordplay. I just realized I'm incredibly stupid and there are actually only 6 types of worlds and not 7 that I wrote down in this transcript, so apparently I don't know how to count. A third category of world is taking a model that is familiar to us or a known model and transforming it into being something completely different. This is exactly what J.K. Rowling did in Harry Potter. She took the known model of the British school system and she transformed it into being a version of the British school system, but that teaches magic. A lot of elements in the world function just like a real school system. There are courses and exams and sports and dining halls and the similar relationships that you have with your teachers. There's also the house system. She just took the model and she turned it into something similar but very different because she added the level of magic. The fourth type of model that exists is taking our Earth as a model and changing one singular thing about it. The 2 examples that the authors gave in this book of worlds that apply to this fourth type of world idea are Minority Report, the Spielberg movie that came out in 2002, and Upside Down, the 2012 movie about the world being flipped upside down. Everything about the world in Minority Report is the same, except for this ability to predict crime before it actually happens. And in Upside Down, the world is the same, but there are just 2 different versions of it upside down from each other. You don't really need to create a whole nother world here, you just need to make the change and figure out how that change impacts everything else in the world. Another type of world that you can create is creating transformations to our current world based on how you think the future is going to play out. This is the umbrella under which most dystopias fall. Essentially what you do with this one is you pay attention to different trends that are cropping up and you imagine what that would look like very far into the future or a little bit far into the future and create a world around that. For example, cloning is a trend. People are starting to clone things and have been cloning things for a while, but what would happen if cloning became more mainstream? Taking that into the future and coming up with a projected reality that could be possible in the future under specific conditions, that is another type of world building. You can also kind of do this retroactively. If you have an idea for a dystopian fiction book, you can trace it backwards and find a way for it to manifest itself based on where we are right now. This is not always possible, and a lot of dystopian authors of the bad dystopian books that came out, like in 2010 to 2015, they usually explain this by doing things like giant plague or giant war that wiped out most of humanity, and what was left was created into a totalitarian dictatorship. You can do better than that, and you should. The last method of world building that this book outlines is creating artifacts, styles, and idea frames that are owned by a specific cultural group, like the Matrix. If you create a culture or a belief system for people, you can create an entire world around that. How would these people have come into being? Where would these people live? Now let's talk about the execution. Effective world building is in the details. You want to be an expert in your world, and you want to make that world as believable as possible, so you need to be able to answer every question you can get about it. And you can take this really far too. Like in the James Cameron movie Avatar, they created an entire language for the Na'vi. People can study that language, it's actually super cool. Here are a couple of quick tips about conveying world building in your writing. The most important one being, do not info dump. Info dumping is awful. Info dumping bores readers, especially info dumping right at the beginning of your story. Your readers are smart. They're going to be able to figure out how stuff works if you show it to them slowly. The book taught me a fun new word, diegesis. Diegetic objects, events, or services are used to manifest worlds. These are little tiny pieces of a much larger system. When you mention a particular object or event that you want to use as a diegetic device, you are asking your readers to fill in around that object. For example, let's say that you're building a world about magic. You can show your main character walking through her hometown and having someone flipping burgers with their magic, with a wand or something, just kind of like waving it and then the burgers are flipping. If you show that to your reader, you don't need to tell them, oh, magic is real and people can use it, because they can see that. This one guy flipping hamburgers with magic is reflective of a much larger system in which people in that society can do magic. Now, you have yet to learn who can do magic and whether it's only people in the fast food industry that can do magic or if it's everybody and whatnot, but it gives you a clue, and dropping clues is also super important because you want to stimulate your reader curiosity. If you don't tell readers everything and make them figure some things out for themselves, they're probably going to get more invested in your story because they're going to have to use their brains and figure things out for themselves. If another clue is dropped, this is going to stimulate intellectual and emotional attachment to your work because people are going to want to know if they were right about what they thought this could be and answer all the questions that are cropping up in their heads. You don't get this kind of attachment when you just tell everyone everything about your world. Not only do you not get it, but you bore them. You don't want to bore them. So yeah, the magic with world building is in the details, and once you figure out which category of world that this fits into, you can go about the process of building worlds specific to those categories, and also go through the process of answering all the really specific questions that you can find in world building packets on the internet. The more you understand about your world, the better, and next week I'm going to walk you through a world that I built from scratch just to show you how I like to build worlds and how I answer the questions that naturally keep popping up for myself as I go through the process. So that's all for this video. Stay tuned for next week when I will walk you through my entire process for world building and we build a world from scratch together. Don't forget to check out the book Design Unbound. It's a really incredible book, and this chapter, I haven't read the entire book, but this chapter was really, really great and very helpful to me. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. I'm on all of the normal social media channels and all of my links are in the description. And if you are looking for a fun, exciting fall read, I am giving away free copies of my debut novel Imperfect if you sign up for my newsletter, link in the description. I'll see you next week, guys, and happy writing.